fairly extensive European tour, which, it seems these days it's very costly to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
With everything has gone up. You know, has that improved a little bit in 4 years, or is the cost really still been?
No, the cost just getting more and more and more.
So it's worse. Yeah.
It's worse. It's totally worse. I mean, even I talk to people. I've got, I have friends in all kinds of bands. Some of them are very, very big bands, and
Hmm.
some of them are very, very small bands, and some of them are in the middle, kind of like us. We're kind of in the middle, and it's the same story. Whether you're talking to the guy that's got 12 Grammys and a wall of platinum albums, he's telling the same story because everyone has to do a budget. Everyone, doesn't matter how big you are. The bigger you are, it's almost the harder because you've got the 80-person crew and
Yeah.
you've got the trucks and things like. They've almost got more problems than the guys that just get into a van. But it's hard. But again, it's sort of equal for different reasons. People in I always say, hey, people that live in Beverly Hills have problems as well. It's all relative.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems to be, it's something you don't hear about though. Nobody's like when everybody went out, it was like it's funny when everybody decided, "Hey, we're all going to go out and tour all at once because everything's opened back up." All you heard for 2 years was how expensive it was, how costly it was, and now you just kind of
And a ton of canceled tours.
yeah, and now it's like it's very quiet. Like people aren't really talking about the expense, and you are getting canceled tours. It's just that nobody's making as big of a deal about it as they were before. I think you get certain bands that'll get together.
You have a
Yeah,
little bit of, you reach a point where you just kind of have to accept it is what it is, or we don't do this. I mean,
yeah,
and no one wants to promote their band as if they're on the poverty line. It's just
yeah,
not. That's not really the tact you want to take, especially 3 years outside of COVID. You just tend to, again, we're able to make it work. Luckily, there's enough interest in us, but it's always that thing. Like bands that used to do like a certain amount of business have now dropped down to here. Bands that used to do this level of business are now down to dealing with everything's just a couple of clicks lower for everybody across the board.
yeah,
And there are exceptions. There are some things and some bands that are just doing extremely well, but not everyone falls into the sort of zeitgeist of, okay, we just seem to have bypassed all that. It's a little bit like the grunge thing. Certain bands just weren't, like Van Halen, just weren't touched by it. They just did their thing. Whereas obviously other bands were very much affected by it. So like anything that comes along that kind of throws you a curveball, you either have to just learn to work around that and make it happen anyway, depending on your level of determination, or because some people didn't come back from the COVID thing, they just went on to other things, or you just get lucky and just don't really get affected by it too much.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's funny because some bands had ended their touring like right before all that happened,
Sure.
and they skipped 2 years of the nonsense because they're making
Mm-hmm.
their record and they didn't have to really deal with it. They just came back and they started touring and they ended up, I mean, the cost of everything went up, but they didn't have to deal with that initial 2 year span where everybody was trying to tour at once.
Well,
Everybody
I
was,
mean, as a
yeah,
manager, I would be telling my bands, sit this out.
yeah,
It's so hard to tell musicians to sit things out though, because
yeah,
they're like, no, we got it. What do you mean sit it? We got to play. We got to get out there. Everyone's. Most musicians, it's like being, playing live is like a drug, and they're like the addict. They have to do it,
mhm,
and they will sometimes tolerate and put up with or be accepting of the most appalling conditions in which to do that. Not everyone, but a lot of people are. Well, or they just go, well, if we're not out live, then I guess we're not really a band. And while that is true, if you're a studio project, if you're not kind of out there live, there was a period there after COVID where I thought it was, smarter just to let's just let the dust settle on this and let the bottleneck kind of loosen up a little bit because you really had, I mean, promoters were having hard times, venues were trying to stay open during that period, but when the floodgates opened, there was such a backlog of postponed tours. A promoter could almost have their pick, and they're always going to book the thing that fills the room rather than the thing that does okay. So they were kind of like this, and this, because we need to get back in business. We need to,
Yeah. Yeah, and that's and I remember when all that happened, everybody it was like everybody then went all out, and then they're canceling a show here, canceling a show there, because then you got like 10 bands playing the same style of music. Maybe not, I mean, they don't sound the same, but you have 10 bands playing heavy metal in one night. You can only have so many of that. You have only so many people to pick from. And I remember shows coming here, bands that would normally play to a much bigger crowd than what they were playing to, because then they had three other bands playing in other venues, that it kind of divided the crowd up. And so so you either had, and so what it caused is you had very few pre-sales.
Yeah, that was a real problem, because tours were getting cancelled based on promoters were pulling shows because pre-sales were light. Even though we had a tour 2022 where we were out, it was Alcatrazz, and we had a Spanish show in Barcelona, and pre-sales were like abysmal, according to the promoter anyway. He goes, I'm gonna have to move you guys to a smaller venue or pull this. And I said, okay, well, it is what it is. We just get on with it. And we do our thing, and we just weather the storm.
Yeah.
As it turned out, they were queued around the block double.
Yep.
And they sold out, and he couldn't even he had to turn people away. And the promoter was almost in tears. He goes, I should have kept it at the bigger venue, man. I've lost so much money.
But you can't. But
it was walk up.
Yeah,
it was walk up.
Yeah, you can't predict that. I remember there was a show here. I can't remember what band it was, but I just know the person that owns the venue was like, I think I'm going to lose my ass on this. Yeah. And he had, dude. I mean, I'm not even joking. There were like 50 tickets sold, but he went on with it. Because at that point, he was just like, I at this point I've lost so much, when the whole COVID thing happened, that what's one more show going to do to me. And it ended up not only selling out, but you couldn't even get in there. He was like blown away. And I think because obviously the cost of everything going up doesn't just apply to touring, but applies to real life, just expenses and being able to live. So it's funny
you say that, because
and so well they're budgeting their money, and then suddenly, okay, now I think I can't afford to go to the show, and then all of a sudden they show up.
I've never seen places when things started up again after COVID. I thought restaurants and airports were going to be empty for a year. I thought so no one's earned any money for 2 years, supposedly.
Yeah.
I've never seen the mayhem that hasn't really stopped since then. I don't know if people are just charging stuff and like, hey, let's just live life, worry about it later, because who knows when we're going to get shut down again. But airports were packed, planes were packed, restaurants were packed, the streets were packed. It was like, after COVID, it was like people, I'm like, so where's all this money come from? No one's had a job for 2 years. I still can't figure that out.
Well, it all depends on what you were doing. I was actually involved in a job in the auto industry where you really can't, like, you really have to be around, right? So I actually, weirdly enough, I made more money with the industry that I was in, because what ended up happening is people let their cars sit around, and things started falling apart, and then and you need transportation, you need to be able to go somewhere. So I made a lot of money from that aspect, because what happened was people's cars sat and things stopped working, and they would bring it in. And even during the pandemic, you get these, what people were doing is, and I don't know how it works in Europe, but what people were doing here is they were getting rid of their newer car, selling it, getting rid of it, whatever they were going to do to get rid of the car payment. And then what they would do is they would go to like a used car lot and buy like a really cheap Honda or Toyota or something like that, something that reliability wise is going to be there. And they would bring the car in and spend a pretty good chunk of money on getting any issues fixed with it. And then they don't have a payment. And so we were making money off of that because, they come in and say, hey, I'll spend $2,000 to fix all these issues. But then you realize they paid $500 for the car, and they put all this money into it, and they don't have a payment anymore. And they end up getting rid of their like $80,000, Cadillac or European car or whatever. And there was a lot of that, and it was crazy. And we had more work. I felt like I had more work during the pandemic than I did afterwards.
Right.
Weird stuff like that. And then everybody, like I said, everybody got I think everybody got stir crazy. And
I didn't. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to jump off in a minute because I've got to head out. But
that's not a problem.
I stayed busy during COVID. I was
so
out riding.
Yeah,
we had great weather over here those couple of years. I was out riding my bike. I was out walking and hiking and doing stuff. Some people just totally had a mental meltdown over it all, and I'm like, why? Just go out and walk. Go out and ride your bike. You don't. It depends what your inner, where your center of gravity is. And for me, it was nothing really changed. Okay, I couldn't get together with a few friends, but we chatted on the phone and we talked on the internet. But I've always been quite okay with my own company. And I went out and walked and rode my bike, and I did stuff that was good for me. And it just kind of blew by. The only real big issue was I like to go to restaurants and have a meal. And I just, that sucks when you can't do that. But
no, I got you.
But other than that, I just made the best of it because, I remember hooking up with old friends that I hadn't seen in a while. COVID turned them into freaking alcoholics. And I'm just like,
yeah,
what happened to you? Oh, they've gained this much freaking weight now. And I'm like, I don't know. Everyone's circumstances are different, but just a little bit of self-discipline and a little bit of motivation, and not letting the media just kind of drive you into a tizzy. Just go out and walk and ride your bike, even if you're just walking around the block because you're not allowed to go any further.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't have that big of a problem with it, to be honest.
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll get going here. It was great to have you on to talk about
Likewise, brother.
Some of these releases that you have coming out or that have come out.
Thank you for the support, as always.
Yeah, and again, I think the Dragonsclaw album, I think it's very good. Very, very. I'm actually surprised. I hadn't, honestly, too. Before we get going, I have never heard the first album, and I don't really remember the second album. But this one, I think, is extremely. I think it's very good.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Hey, it's Tony here from the Metal Command Show. I want to thank you for watching this portion of the program. Since 1998, I have hosted the show, which started off as a radio program and is now into the podcast format. So I want to thank you for watching and or listening. And if you want to support the program, hit the subscribe button, hit that little bell to be notified anytime I do post any content. A lot of you have been supporting the show and really, really helping this show grow, and I cannot do it without all of you. So with that said, thanks for watching. Stay metal.